We have Nathalia A. Geraldo. She is with the Regional Business Assistance Corporation, or RBAC, and she is Director of Financial Programs for RBAC. And in this position, she oversees all functions related to loan referrals, credit operations, marketing, and portfolio risk management for the community organization, which has a portfolio of over $220 million. She has 10 years experience working on economic development for United Nations outreach to Latin America and to the Caribbean, to capital access for small businesses in the tri-state area. She holds a non-for-profit management certification from Columbia University, as well as a degree on management sciences and economics from Kane University. Please welcome Nathalia A. Geraldo.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm officially a millennial, and I do feel entitled to actually tell you a lot of good information. But yes, actually your customers kind of look like me, even though a lot of my friends tell me that I actually tend to look like an older person. I wear different clothes. I tend to dress like an older person. I tend to do things that are more for an older person than who I am. But actually, that's part of the mix. So you should actually look into everyone. I don't follow much Facebook. I don't have a Twitter. Well, I do have a Twitter account, which I can't get into it because I think it was hacked. And I definitely don't do Instagram. But what I can tell you is that, yes, Andrew is absolutely right. You have to look into so many different markets that are out there. But when I think about this area, the Toms River area, I think about people that are really starting small, Main Street, mom and pop shops. Will that be kind of accurate? Let me, by a raise of hands, how many of you actually have a business right now? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10? I like the guy in the buffet who's actually eating and not facing me, but he raised the spoon. That's great. He's listening. Thank you. How many of you are really looking to start a business? Well, you're definitely up for a challenge. I have to say that every day I said, oh my God, I should just start a business. But I don't have the courage. Every time I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, no. I feel more comfortable getting that paycheck. So that's something you have to entertain. But that doesn't mean I have not seen amazing people have great businesses starting from scratch. So let me tell you about who I am in the company that I work for. As the Director of Financial Programs, my job really is to not only stand in front of people and tell them about what we do, but also process the applications, help throughout the underwriting process, getting them approved, and the most difficult part for a banker, getting the loan closed. Believe it or not, that's actually what I think the most difficult end of the game. Getting you approved, sometimes it's difficult, troublesome, but for some reason, clients think that once they get approved, that's it. No, there's another stage, which is making sure that you comply with the closing. Now, with that said, let me just tell you a little bit about what banks look for. As a community organization, we're here to help you because normally you don't meet the bank's criteria. So if you're a pure startup, you're not going to meet the bank's criteria just because there's so much risk. It's been told that 75% of small businesses fail within the first year. Well, when you have that kind of statistical data, of course the banks are going to shy away from you. They're going to be like, no, you know what, we want to see at least 2 years in business. But not only we want to see you 2 years in business, but we want to see you profitable 2 years in business. And these are the kind of things that you have to take into consideration. Now, the great news is that you have people like Don at Score and all the other mentors that are here in the room that could actually guide you through the process. Because let's be honest, you might have great bankers like John Crisofulli in the bank, who will actually sit with you and tell you what it is and what it's like, but not all banks have someone, a dedicated person like Kearney has. Most bankers, you know what, they have to meet their numbers. So they sit down with you. Once you tell them you're a startup business, they already are like, oh, okay, I have 10 minutes for you. Why? Because you're not gonna help them meet their monthly goals. Why? Because you just don't qualify for bank financing. So there's risk. That's the first thing that you have to take into consideration. You're a risky business for banks. But there's a lot of different organizations like RBAC that are supported by the SBA, where we provide small business loans. So at RBAC, we have a program, and not only RBAC, there's other organizations in the state like UCEDC, like CBAC, that provide microloans up to $50,000. So if you are just starting a business, you could actually call me or call any of these other organizations and said, well, you know what, I need a $30,000 loan to start my business. And I will say, of course, sure, no problem. Let me see your business plan. And then you're gonna be like, oh, well, business plan, it's here. And I'm like, well, over in your mind is great, but I can't read it. I actually need it in paper. That's when you go back to Score for them to give you that guidance, to help you put in paper all those ideas. So that's like, if most of you are into the business or into looking to start a business, that's gonna be the number one thing for you, a business plan. But what happens if you're already in business, which I think about 10 of you are, but you're looking for financing and you're kind of overwhelmed with the process? Maybe you went to your local bank, maybe you went to one of the big banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and they told you, no, you know, you're showing losses, we can't help you. Let's think from the banker's point of view. What does the bank really want from you? Or even us at a lending community organization, we look at 4 different things. And they're called the 4 C's. Actually, they're 5, but I always resume it to 4 just because of time purposes. But 4 things are the most important things is as a business owner that is looking for financing, you should really keep into consideration. Number 1 is character. And you wonder, what's character, right? Is it like Donald Trump character? What kind of character? What do you look into? Well, let's put it this way. If I stood up in front of you right now wearing short shorts or a very short skirt with a very tight top, what would you think about my presentation? Even if I gave you good information, you will be biased. You'll be thinking like, I don't know if I could trust her. Well, the same thing if you come to me and you ask me for a $50,000 loan to start a business. And you said, Nathalia, I want to open a Chinese restaurant. And then I said, okay, sure. Why a Chinese restaurant? Let's say you're from Latino background or you're a Indian background. Like, why a Chinese restaurant? Oh, because I live across the street from a Chinese restaurant. That place is packed every day. They have to be making money. So, you know what? I like to cook. I'm going for it. I'll be like, well, that's a good idea, but do you have experience? Have you ever worked at a restaurant? Or have you actually worked at a Chinese restaurant? And you'll be like, no, but I'm gonna hire a couple of people who are gonna do it for me. There's a couple of Chinese guys that I know that they probably know how to cook. Well, my first impression of you is gonna be like, oh my God, what is going on in here? How do I get rid of this person? Why? Because the character piece of it is like, you have no idea what you're talking about. And the reality is that's the first part of the meeting process with a banker that you should have nailed. You should be prepared. So if you're a construction worker, of course we are assuming you're gonna show up in boots and with tough hands and you're looking maybe a little dirty. Of course, that's what a construction worker's look like if you're in construction. Now if you're into, let's say you wanna open a beauty salon and your hair is a mess, I'll be like, oh, okay. What about a nail salon and your nails are, I think about the girls that do my nails and their nails are not that great. I'm like, oh my God. You know, you have to lead by example. So that's the first thing about character. Now character goes attached to, so that's the first C, character. And character is also evaluated not only at banks, but at RBAC by your business plan. If you have not done the homework, but you just have this idea, right? Like for example, as a person, I love crepes. I love crepes, just love them. I always think that, you know what, I should open a crepes, small little cafe. Why not? But I never actually done the homework. I actually have never put down the idea in paper. So what does it really say about me and me wanting to open a crepes cafe? Maybe I'm not that interested, right? It's not my priority. I haven't done much about it. I just dream about it. I'm like, oh, maybe I should do this. But I really haven't done the homework. Now, business plans are very overwhelming. That's why going back to SCORE should be your priority, because they help you put together those ideas. You know, the introduction, management ability, competition analysis. And for that, make sure you actually use Google because it's great for you to locate who's your competition. You don't want to go into business when you don't really know who you're competing against. We have seen it a lot with supermarkets where they want to, and actually in the Latino community, we see that they want to open a bodega, but there's 3 huge supermarkets around them, and I'm like, how are they going to survive? How are they going to make it, right? So that's why it's so important for you to actually do the homework. Google Maps, search by, and figure out if there is somebody else doing the same thing that you're looking to do. You will be amazed. Now, so we have down character. Then character goes hand by hand with credit. A lot of you will be like, oh, credit? Wait a minute. That's my personal credit. Credit has nothing to do with the business that I'm looking to open. Why do you ask me about credit? Well, it's very simple. Back in the days, if you think about 200 years ago, and you were a landowner, right? You were the landlord, and one of your neighbors in a farm next to you came to you and said, let me borrow $5. I'm gonna buy some pigs, I'm gonna buy some sheep, and I pay you back in 6 months. Back then, how do you think the landlord or even the local lender will actually think that you will going to pay back? What did it happen back then? Now, if I was to do the same now with Peter at Kearney, he's the vice president of lending, and I said, Peter, let me borrow, let's say $5 back then is now $20,000. Peter, I need to borrow $20,000. We know each other. What do I need?
More than a handshake.
More than a handshake, that's right. The reality is that back in the days, the handshake was really, looking at each other's eyes and said, well, yes, I do trust this person. Unfortunately, that's not the way business are run right now. Banks actually want to see how do you behave. Who have you not paid in the past, right? Do you pay on time? Do you have a lot of credit card debt? And that all is something that we see on your credit report. Now there's of course, medical collections are a problem, but from the bank's point of view, we understand medical collections. We understand things that might not be your fault. But there's things that are definitely your responsibility, right? Let's say you got very sick and then you were laid off and you had a 2-year, very difficult years where you couldn't make all the payments on time, but that was a year ago, and now, for the past year, you've been showing improvement. That's actually good. But the reality is, for banks, a lot of the times they will require you to meet a minimum credit score. And it changes from bank to bank. So some banks could go as low as 620. Some banks will, the bigger banks will require 680. And that's something that you have to keep into consideration when you come to the bank. So now we talked about character, we talked about credit. Now, how do you make sure your character is up to par? Well, do the homework and go visit SCORE, do the business plan. And how do you make sure that your credit is up, your credit side is up to par? Pull your credit report. It's free in the state of New Jersey from any of the 3 credit bureaus, Expedia, TransUnion, or Equifax. And you can do it for free if you go to annualcreditreport.com. And there's some credit cards now that actually tell you what your credit score is, but you really want to pull your full credit report. You want to know, you want to understand what's in there that might be hurting you. So now we have 2. Character and credit. Let's go to the following one, which is cash flow. Now, for those of you who are starting out, might be wondering, well, Nathalia, I'm starting out. What kind of cash flow am I going to show? Well, it's simple. It's called projections. And again, you go back to SCORE and the business plan to figure out those projections. So let's go back to the Chinese restaurant example. What do we want to see in projections? We want to see projections that are doable, that make sense. I have seen in many cases, there's a client recently that wanted to open a newspaper in a pretty depressed area in New Jersey, in a city that is very depressed, and he said, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna have 2 salespersons, and they're gonna go and get $5,000 per week in advertising. My first thought was, wait, hold on a second. This is a city that is, medium income, maybe $12,000. Businesses cannot afford advertising. But he really feels that that's actually true. And he did a great business plan. But the reality is that's when you actually go back to SCORE and you check your facts. Is it really doable? For me, it's not. In my experience, I don't think that is doable. Can he prove me wrong? Of course, we love to be proven wrong, but the reality is that's a big number. When you think about 2 salespersons, $5,000 each, that's $10,000 a week, that's $40,000 a month. That's a lot of money in advertising. I mean, some of you that are in business, advertising, maybe $200, $300, $300 budget in a monthly basis. So it's really hard. Now, you need to convince us that those projections make sense. Correct? So, can you make it happen? Of course. But try to be conservative. Being conservative is always the best way to go. Now, don't be so conservative in a way where you actually show a loss the first year. Because then we're going to be wondering, well, how are you going to pay for the loan? Right? If you're not going to make money the first year, it's okay to show losses for the first 3 to 6 months, but we actually want to see that you break even after the 6th month. And that's why character comes back to play, where for those of you who are starting out, don't quit your jobs if possible. Stay in your job, because if you can still pay for your personal expenses, for us it's very important, because then we are assuming that you're not going to be a burden to the business. So going back to projections, when we actually look at a business plan and the projections say that you're going to take a salary of $80,000, $100,000 the first year. And the bottom line is going to show a loss of $200,000. It comes to play, you have to look at Don's face. He's like, what? Of course, because then we're going to be thinking, well, you're draining the business. You cannot afford to take that kind of salary. That's what you have to take into consideration. Well, what do I need to pay for my living expenses? Maybe you have a spouse that could help you in the process, where personal expenses are taken care of. Now, character, credit, cash flow. But what about cash flow for existing businesses? What do we look for? And this is when you really need a good accountant. I always say, please, please get a good accountant. Someone that really is going to help you through the process. And tell them that you're actually going to look for a loan in the future. Because the reality is, if you go to your accountant and said, well, I don't want to report all my income, I don't want to pay Uncle Sam. Who wants to pay Uncle Sam? Of course, I don't blame you, I understand. But the reality is, if you show a loss beyond what you can report in depreciation, then we're not going to be able to do a loan, because we're going to be like, where are you going to get the money from to pay for the loan, right? Those are the kind of things that you need to take into consideration. As a business owner, one of the things that gets me more scared when I'm processing a loan is, I think not the one, it's now one of the ones is the one. When the business owner says, look, I don't know what you're asking about net profit, I don't understand, talk to my accountant. When that's your answer, my first question to you is like, well, if you have diabetes, and I need you to explain to me, what kind of diabetes do you have? Would you just tell me, go talk to my doctor? That's kind of the same. I need to know what is in the bottom line of your taxes, and I want to know why. You actually signed that document in an annual basis. So you should be able to actually know what you're signing. At the end of the day, your accountant is not the one responsible. It's actually you. So that's something that you really need to take into consideration. The bottom line of your tax returns or your financial statements are so important. You should know what a profit and loss is. You should know what a balance sheet is. You should understand that. And that's why SCORE, I cannot stress it hard enough, has not only training, seminars where you can come and understand that free of charge, but also you can actually sit with one of their experts and tell them, look, I don't understand what my accountant is doing here. Can you help me? And they will put up the time to help you. So please, please, please get a SCORE counselor. And I always tell them, use them and abuse them as much as you can, of course, as long as in a legal matter. So the last one, collateral. This one, as an SBA lender, always becomes a problem. So, just to recap, character, credit, cash flow, last one, collateral. The fifth one is actually conditions, which is really market conditions. It's a good time to open a business. But collateral is actually a very sensitive one. Why? Because no one wants to pledge collateral. If you own a house, you're like, why do you want to involve my house? My house has nothing to do with my business venture. Well, it actually has everything to do with your business venture. Why? Because we want to see skin in the game. We want to see that you trust and you believe so much in your idea that you're willing to put your house as collateral, even if it doesn't have much equity or has no equity at all. Because the reality is that Kearney will say, yes, we'll lend you $100,000 for working capital. And you're like, okay, great. But I'm not, and then Kearney said, we need you to sign a personal guarantee. You're like, wait, why? That's the business. It's not me. Well, the business is you, 24/7. So we need to believe and trust that you actually are going to pay us back. And not like in the Kelly example where it was just a handshake. There is, the banks now take into consideration and they want you to sign. They just do. Unless you're a middle market loan, which means like $5 million, $10 million loan. For SBA purposes, again, for the Small Business Administration, all loans require a personal guarantee. So it's not even the bank that requires it, it's actually the SBA. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's taxpayers' money. They want to make sure you pay back and you don't default. So credit, character, credit, cash flow, and collateral. Those are the 4 things that you have to keep in mind all the time when you're approaching a bank, when you're looking for financing. Now, there's 2 other loans. So one of our main programs is a microloan program for those of you who are starting up to $50,000. Then we have another program called Community Advantage, which is a 7A loan, which you can also get at any bank like Carney. The banks go up to $5 million. We only go up to $250,000. That's because that should be our focus. By law, we cannot go higher than that. And that's a program that is also really good if you don't fit the conventional bank's criteria. The bank wants the SBA to guarantee the loan. So the SBA guarantees up to 75% of the loan in case you default. But believe me, they will hunt you down. They will find you. So it's not like, Uncle Sam co-signed for me and therefore I'm out of the hook. No, it's kind of like a student loan. You're out the hook forever. Then the other program that we have is for commercial real estate. If any of you here are paying rent, looking to buy, instead of continue to pay rent and throwing that money out of the window, but you want to build equity in your balance sheet, you want to own your own space, talk to me afterwards. We have a great program where you only have to put 10% down to purchase commercial real estate. It is called the SBA 504 program. So that's about it. And I guess questions afterwards, right?
Thank you very much.